like their how they can implement some stuff. And also, so I also communicate with like the clinical study. So our clinical team. So because we're also creating like a clinical study app for our product. So dealing with them is also not dealing, but like communicating with them is also takes like a good chunk of my week. So they like say like what data they need, and then I kind of interpret that into design, and then maybe sketch some wireframes, and then like check back with them, and then check back with the internal team, and then after that we go through like the final designs, and then like give it off to like the product, so the offshore engineering team. So that's like a week in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of that, that's really interesting that you have kind of like this process that you go through. More specifically, I guess there's many different factors ranging from like overall human psychology to analysis and synthesization of data and designing to this question's open to anyone. Do you guys have like a framework you use when you go about like solving a problem that requires the use of these skills, and how do you break down challenging problems?
Speaking just from my perspective, I think a lot of the time designers and product managers will approach me with a specific problem, expecting UX research to solve it. And so that can be a little bit challenging because as you can, it's clear that it's already a large problem. So it might not be something that UX research can handle. And so what I generally do is workshops. And so I'll get all the folks in the room who the product touches, or who that question touches. And it's almost a brainstorming session altogether before even doing any research, because I think that's like a really valuable step. And sort of that way, when I do end up doing research, if research is necessary, it's kind of the scope is narrowed down to what the real problem is. And so I think workshops are great to kind of as a great jumping point and a starting point. And then I'm sure the designers do a lot of maybe design sprints and things like that to narrow down the scope to what they're working on as well. I'm sure that folks can kind of speak on those as well.
Yeah, also, just a lot of people in the audience might not be familiar with a few of the terms. So, like workshops or sprints, do you mind just breaking that down a little bit more?
Yeah, so for a workshop, it can be anything really, but it's really just getting everybody in the room and almost brainstorming what the issue is, brainstorming solutions, and you can be sort of creative in the way that you even handle that workshop. It can even be fun. I think a lot of the times, work can be very, very serious. And so when you do the workshops, it adds kind of like a lightness to it. And then as far as design sprints, I'm sure the other folks can answer that more in depth, but in general, it's kind of brainstorming designs and having as much input as possible on the designs, and then narrowing it down to what's actually useful. I think what's helpful with those is that you're kind of throwing everything out there at once, because it helps with creativity, and it helps, think of kind of sort of solutions that you may not have thought of before. And so having that many folks kind of working on those at once is helpful. And then, I'm sure other folks can maybe speak on design sprints as well.
Yeah, I think that explained it very well. I think it also depends on if it's existing project or product, or if it's something new. So for existing projects, we work on features one by one, and we start with the ones that have like people have been complaining about it, or it's been really like old and outdated. So we work a lot with customer service, and they usually just like tell us we really have problem here and people are complaining about it. So that kind of after that, we do just like interviews with those people. We ask them what are the problems that they've been having, and we try to focus on those pain points and try to find solutions. And then we go to like start wireframing, and then it's kind of circle. It's not like linear process where you design something, you just like again show it, you test it, you do sometimes internal testing with like people who are in a direct relationship with customers, and then when you at a point where you can show that to the customers, you do that, and it just like repeat, do and repeat, do and repeat until we have like a good design that's functioning.
Yeah, so speaking of wireframing, you mentioned that so there's a lot of like core components of UI and UX design. Ala, do you mind do you mind sharing like those core components briefly? Like I know like information architecture, interaction design, usability, wireframing, visual design are a few that I've heard of.
Yeah. So there are basically like three main steps that are like, as I say, like it goes in circle. There's the discovery part. That's where research comes. That's where we do like competitive analysis. We see what other competitors do and what we need to understand about the space that we're gonna create and why we're creating it. We also try to find the like what is our audience? Who are we creating this product for? And after that, we create like user scenarios to see like how a person is gonna use or like need this product, and also surveys and interviews. And this is all like the first part. Then the second part is concepting, and that's where it's all about like creating a design solution for the things that we discussed in the previous like business and user requirements. So we already have that from the first step, and now it's time to find a solution. So we will be using like wireframes. Basically, like wireframes is a low fidelity design, something that is like just the beginning of a design. And then we have like user flows, and then we start making mockups, and like there's like a lot of terms, but basically we just create something, a design that we can show to people. And then the last part is prototyping and user testing. And this is where we kind of determine if the design solution that we found in the previous step, if it was effective or not. So we put it in front of people, users, and then we see if it was easy for them to complete these tasks, if it was easy for them to use the product. Yeah, I think these are like the main three ones. And then after that, if we have problems, we go back to the first step, and then.
Yeah, that was a very great breakdown. I think I understood that very well. Um, Now, just to pivot a little into, so there might be a lot of people in here who are trying to get into the space. And many UX and UI designers have backgrounds in web development, graphic design, and I think even amongst a lot of you, there's like very different backgrounds. So I was hoping if we can go through each of you and maybe you could speak to how important it is to have a background in like coding or graphic design. And then secondly, what skills do you think people need for your role, both soft and technical? And Sim, can we start with you?
I'm sorry, did you mention me?
Yeah, do you mind starting it off?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Like I mentioned in my introduction, I started off as a graphic designer in junior graphic design roles. So I already had a prominent background in visual design. I think that's very important. My day-to-day is producing mock-ups. So I think it's important to have a background in graphic design so you already know these type of factors that you want to bring into your day-to-day work. Just knowing that how to deal with the client's brand guidelines and applying their standards to the project you're working on, being able to apply those methodologies to your day-to-day work. And then doing any necessary research that you need to as far as tapping into the UX side and how you should approach that. So I think it is necessary to have some background in design if you are tapping into it for your own reason. If you like research, then, more UX. If you like designing, then, being a great designer and having a visual eye is definitely important to this work.
Yeah, that was very insightful. Aisha, do you mind taking it away next?
Yeah, I agree with Samira 100%. Actually, so for some reason, like in my early college career, like when I was like starting to make out apps, I thought we had to do our own graphics for some reason because I didn't know about the industry. So I was researching like how to use Adobe Photoshop and like XD, and I didn't know that like I was doing UI UX specifically, right? So I was just like researching articles, and then I found the term and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And I thought I needed to know this as like a developer, which you do, but to an extent. right? So that's why visuals is definitely key. And something else I also encourage like UI UX designers to have is like a soft skill, which is communication. So communication is extremely important. So you communicate with a lot of teams, like you have to communicate the problems, you have to communicate the solutions. So even like I can give an example. Like 2 weeks ago, like my audio scientist in our company, like he came up to me, he's like, the dashboard admin, it needs this and that, right? And I was like, whoa, hold up, right? And then like I had a meeting with him, we had an Excel sheet, and then kind of like the process that Allah was like describing, we have that too. So we had a team, instead of a workshop though, we have like team hurdles. So everyone like the top, so maybe like 6 people in maximum, like they all come together and we all just talk it out, and then we come up with like and then the person who requested the feature or like the redesign creates like a creative brief, and like even within that creative brief, that person finds out like, oh, this, they find something, like, right? So then yeah, so we have that whole process. So communication is very important.
Aisha, and Dua, do you want to share your perspective as well?
Sure. So as far as research, some folks will be happy to know you don't necessarily have to have a design background for that. I do not have a design background. But obviously I'm working heavily with designers, and depending on companies, smaller companies might have UX research and designer roles kind of fused. But it is kind of a luxury sometimes to have the UX research role separated out from the designer role. But as far as me, I do not have any background in design. I do have a background in research. And so, but my background is in academic research. And so I was sort of able to transition and leverage those research skills into the UX research world. But that type of research is very much different. The methodologies are a bit different, and it's not as obviously robust as academic research. But as far as like getting into the UX research field, I think anybody who is sort of curious can figure out a way to kind of leverage their sort of skills to transition into UX research. I'm only saying this because the researchers that I know all have very eclectic backgrounds. There isn't necessarily a traditional way to get into UX research, although there are folks who have like HCI degrees and that sort of traditional way, which is becoming more traditional. But most of the researchers I know have very, very, very different backgrounds and are just sort of just passionate about users and passionate about making sure that the tools that we use and the apps that we're presenting to folks are useful to everyone and not just to a small group of folks.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Dua. Thanks for sharing that. And to just go off of that a little bit more, so there are a lot of people and there are a lot of questions that came in about people with those untraditional backgrounds where they're trying to get into it at this point. So from my perspective for software engineering, like whenever someone asks me how to get into it, I'll always tell them like do like some Udemy course on like maybe like an object-oriented programming language, and then once you finish the course, build a project. So for you guys, I know like it's different with like research versus like design. If someone's trying to get their foot in the door, is there like a certificate they should do? Is there like initially, should they do some sort of course that you recommend? Should they be building a project? Like how do they practice? And actually, Aisha, can we have you get started on that?
Yeah, so I guess like my advice is like maybe mainly for like college students. It could actually apply to like people outside of college, but certificates can like only take you so far, right? Like you can keep learning and it's never ending, right? Like learning. So I would say like you learn more by doing. So I would encourage you to like maybe go into your clubs, like even like so if you have a software engineering background or like our major or like computer science major, right? And you're working on a product or like a project. So sometimes like we work on like an e-commerce website, right? Like go in and like just take like that, just go in and just be like, okay, I'm gonna like start on the design, right? And so just start designing on it. Maybe like and communicate with your team. Obviously like they might want you to do coding, but you might take like the double task of like also designing it. So that's how I got started, is like I like within my you know, like software engineering classes, like I also like went and took that like design initiative, right? So like I designed the whole product, and like our teams like won first place, and that's how I got like my first contract role, is because like someone from like my Society of Women Engineers, she remembered me from like one of the projects, and so she was like, hey Aisha, you can like, you know, this is like a paid role, you can like totally get in. And then so that's how I got started. So just like start by doing, like there's you can always take courses, you're always learning, right? Like even in jobs, like right now, like I feel like I'm also taking like a bunch of courses right now. So it's you learn by doing. So that's gonna be.
That's a great perspective. I've been hearing a lot about like you have to practice, and I hear like something that I've heard, you guys can tell me if this is right or not, is you can try by redesigning like an application or website or something that already exists that you think has been done well. Um, Ala or Samira or Duad, do any of you have any perspectives on that? Like, and then also, are there any specific tools that you think people should start learning? Like, I hear a lot about like Figma. Maybe you guys have a better idea.
Yeah, I can definitely jump in there. And this is to add on to the previous question, whether you want to be a UI UX designer or versus a researcher. I think it's important, if you want to be a designer, to learn the necessary tools. You know, get familiar with the Adobe Creative Suite. Of course, that is what is primarily used. But for UI design, you would definitely want to look at Adobe XD, Figma, and Sketch. These three tools do primarily the same functions, so it would be good to find out what tools you need to use. And also, when you're, you know, deciding what role you want to get in, I think it's important to look at what your portfolio should look like before you apply to companies, and do your necessary research on getting there to have your portfolio look how it should be. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think portfolio is a must now if you want, especially if you want to do UI, UX, because this is the only way that the recruiter will know how you work and how your work looks like. And it shouldn't have only, like if you want to do only UI design, it's different from if you want to do both. And I feel like most of the places, they're looking for someone, especially like not very big companies, they're looking for someone who knows how to do everything. And like, we call it full stack designer, and they expect you to be able to do like all the different steps of the design. So I think the first step is to know, like, are you sure this is what you want to do? And the only way to know is to like take a lot of classes to understand what it is exactly, because I feel like a lot of people, they start and they're like, oh, I just heard about it, but like, it's interesting, I just want to do it like this. But I feel like it took me so many months and so many years just to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. And the only way to know is to take classes, to try, work on real projects. And these projects, you put them in your portfolio, and this is how you can have a job. Because we were hiring for someone just like a few weeks ago, and all people who didn't have a portfolio, we just like passed, because it's like it's getting more and more competitive field. So portfolio is a must.
And don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated to learn a new skill and learn those tools, learn those softwares. There are a lot of like short videos on YouTube like that you wouldn't even think of if you're like hung up on something. Like, just don't be intimidated if you are interested in getting into the field. I think that's important for the audience to know.
Yeah, I feel like there are tons of YouTube videos and tons of things. Like, if someone wants to learn, it's so easy to find. And all the tools are like Figma, Sketch. They all look like work like kind of similar. So if you're able to work with one, for sure you'll be able to work with the other one. It's very intuitive.
So Anna, you mentioned your company was hiring, and maybe everyone can just provide this really succinctly. Uh, but what are like a few qualities that you think your companies are looking for when they're hiring for roles like yours?
Is the question for me?
Yeah, you can start it off.
Yeah, so as I say, like we were looking, we just like filled the position last week, but we were looking for someone who is like, we call it full stack designer, which basically someone who can do everything and wear many hats, because we only have two designers and the new designer is gonna join. So there's a lot of things to do and they have just to put you somewhere and you need to be able to like to do the job. So basically someone who is also a team player and in the same time can work independently and without needing to be micromanaged, because it's like impossible when you have a lot of work and just like few people. Also, like I think someone who has an eye for design, you don't have to have like a background in graphic design, but like something that is like creative, that you can use and like use those skills that you had before and put it here. So I think an eye for design is very important in my company, like in the company I work in. Yeah, I think that's it. And like someone who is problem solver, because this is like basically our work. You just have a problem and you're supposed to come up with a solution by yourself. But these are the main things we were looking for in new hire.
Pretty clear. Samira and then Aisha and then Dua, do you guys want to answer?
I think from my experience and my perspective, if you're working for a startup company, like Allah said, they may want you to like stretch yourself and be able to handle more than one thing versus a larger company, something like Google or Microsoft, they may be comfortable with you just doing one necessary thing. Yeah, I think it's also HR's responsibility to know what they want in a new employee. Sometimes there's confusion there with job descriptions. Sometimes companies don't know what they want when they expect a new employee. So I think those just make sure. My advice is to make sure you're well-rounded with whatever area of UI UX design that you want to enter.
Aisha, you can go ahead next.
Yeah, so I guess like from my experience, so yeah, I agree with what Samira and Ella said. Like you need to have a portfolio; it's a must. Actually, the reason why I got the job that I did, like they were actually searching for like a senior UI UX designer, and the people that I was competing with had like years of experience in their industry, but they didn't have enough projects, or like they had like maybe one project in their portfolio, and they were so shocked, right? And when they looked at my portfolio and it was like so many projects, like and then I also like walked them through like my GitHub, right? And so they like hired me even though I didn't have that much experience, because they could see like I'm driven, I'm like I keep like, you know, updating my portfolio, and it's becoming really, really competitive nowadays, so it is a must. Yeah, so that's what I just want to say.
As far as for research and portfolio, it's becoming more important, but it wasn't as important when I started. And in the perspective of a researcher, like the portfolio is a little bit different than a designer's portfolio, in the sense that you would just be highlighting maybe just one project or two projects just to kind of show your thought process and how you approach a project. And so like, you know, this was the question, this was the method I used to do research, and these were the insights I got, and this was the product impact or design impact or whatever ultimate impact it has. And you kind of just flesh that out just to show that you kind of have the ability to kind of think through in that way. And so that's generally what right now we're doing interviews for UX research interns, and that's kind of what we want to see, and that our interns are thinking through the project and thinking through what the ultimate impacts will be. And so we were talking about like how you can get started and you know, and developing those portfolios. I think one really great way to develop a portfolio, at least in the UX research perspective, is like if you know somebody who potentially is starting an app or working on something, to just ask them if you can do research for them. And so then that way you can, you know, add that to your portfolio and show this is the research I did for them, and this is the impact that they had ultimately implemented in their decision-making process. And that way it's something that is pretty tangible. And then I've seen other folks also, you know, take an app that already exists and give what your do research on an app that already exists and develop insights and give what your recommendations would be for a potential change. And I've seen many folks be impressed by that as well, even though it's not something that's actually, you know, that would actually be implemented, but it shows, you know, your thought process and you know, how you would approach a specific project. And I've seen that also included in people's portfolios. So you don't necessarily have to have you know, experience working in a specific company, because I know it's really hard, because it is that I saw somebody put a comment about that loop of like, you know, you need experience to get a job, but how do you get that experience? And so I know I've been in that struggle, and I know that that can be challenging. And so one thing that you can do, like many folks have said, is that, you know, take those classes, understand the jargon, understand the lingo, so that you can ultimately like implement it into your portfolio and show that you know what you're talking about. Because sometimes it is jargon, and I know some of the words that we throw out, you know, you might not know what they are, but they're pretty self-explanatory after you kind of get to know the space and stuff. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that was a great insight, especially with the point about like redoing like something that already exists and kind of like looking at it with another lens. And another question, actually, Dua, maybe you can get us started on this one. How do you create designs that are inclusive or appeal to a diverse set of users, both accessibility-wise and for people of different cultural backgrounds? I'm guessing a lot of that comes into the research step.
So yeah, so I love that question, because that's something that that I think about a lot, especially somebody who works in the rideshare space, where you have folks who are deaf, you have folks who are blind, you have folks who, you know, have various you know, things that we have to consider when we're developing the app. And so from a researcher's perspective, I always try to, when I'm interviewing folks and recruiting folks to get interviewed for whatever project I'm working on, is to get a diverse demographic, and to at least get, you know, one person who, you know, might be hard of hearing or might have some sort of something that we can at least include within our insights, so that we can show that they're a different perspective in how somebody is using something. And so that's one way, at least from my perspective, is to at least attempt to recruit folks from a different demographic, and to at least make sure that it is diverse when you're doing that recruitment, because then when your insights are presented, you have some sort of you know, insights from all folks. Because ultimately, if you're building an app that is an app or whatever you're working on, that is useful for all groups, it will be better for everyone. I think there's the perspective that when you're building something, that you have to kind of think of, you know, the majority group, and if you don't think of that majority group, it might not be the best sort of experience. But if you make something that, you know, is visible and all folks can comprehend it and is useful, it's ultimately going to be beneficial for everyone. And so that's one thing that I've ultimately been trying to do more of, is the recruitment of diverse demographics. And so that's how I can do my part. And then I'm sure designers have some insights onto how they've tried to kind of include that in their work.
Yeah, if any of the designers want to take it away.
Yeah, I think the give like the good part for the research, and then for more like visual design, we're trying more and more, because I think before it was kind of a luxury to do accessibility, but now it's more important, and I'm glad that it is this way. So it's more like, for example, the size of the text, it should not be too small for people who can't see well, so they can see it. The position of the things in the screen, because some people like have to zoom so that they can, because they can't use normal web page. The colors, the contrast of the colors. Like sometimes we're like, oh, this gray is so nice, I want to use it, but you can't use it because a lot of people cannot see it, because the background is like not light enough, or like the text is not dark enough. Also, like for example, you're entering something and the transaction didn't work, you can't only use colors like red color to say, oh, this is not working. You have to use also text for people who cannot see colors. So these are just like some examples, but now there are more like softwares, like there's one that's called Stark that is very helpful, that can help you just like, you can be like, oh, this color, do they work? Are they AA, AAA accessible? So there are more and more tools to help us having accessible products.
Well, I can jump in there. I'm currently going through an ADA training with my company now. We have part 2 this week coming up. But just as Allah said, from a designer standpoint, there are certain things that you have to rule out when you're dealing with users who may have a disability. For example, something new that I just learned, having too much white space on your website could be a problem, or not having enough live text. So if a user is using like a live reading tool, if they can't see, the text should be live on the site for them to read or to hear through their recording. So yeah, I can add on to that by saying that largely that's important.
That was a great perspective. Before I turn it over to Safa for like more of like the Q&A questions in the chat, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about all of your experiences as being women in like tech in the space and being women of color. Yeah, so can we start off with whoever wants to take it first, but some difficulties maybe you've had like maneuvering the space and how you've dealt with it. And then if mentorship played a role for you at all as a minority woman in tech. I'm gonna nominate Samira because no one else is speaking.
Okay. I would like to say, to start off, we all know that the industry is like dominated by men. It doesn't typically welcome women or minority groups, but through the past few years, I can see an increase of people of color saturating the industry. Not with my current role, but previously I have dealt with experiences of being undervalued, looked at as possibly not good enough to be promoted or advanced, just not being in supportive spaces. And that itself makes it hard to like navigate your job role and to be in social settings. So yeah, also dealing with, maybe small microaggressions that may be towards you that you might pick up later in conversation. So all of this, affects you as an employee and how you might look at yourself and your confidence with succeeding. But mainly how I've dealt with it and how I still do is just to keep one goal in mind, and that's to progress within my career field, and to learn every day with what I'm doing and to continue to learn. It's my responsibility to succeed. So yeah, those are some things that I've dealt with previously, but I'm happy to see, just on this panel that, women of color are succeeding in their roles.
Also, Samir, do you mind telling us where you're based out of again?
Yeah, I mean, this is funny, I guess. I'm in South Carolina, so I am in the South. And most of the times, for the companies I have worked for and the company I do work for, you're one out of, you just work for predominantly, white companies. So sometimes it's difficult to navigate. When you don't know where people stand, their intentions may not be clear. But none of that has to do with, your job and you showing up every day. So keep going, keep trucking. It has nothing to do with you and your journey. Just keep your goals clear, perseverance and determination.
For sharing that. If anyone else wants to add anything, I'll feel free.
I agree that like, especially for women in tech, before, I remember 10 years ago when I was in school, I was the only girl in the tech related classes. And now it's definitely different. Like we have a lot of women in our company. It's more like liberal company. So that's very helpful. I do think I'm the only Muslim there as far as I know. So, but I still don't feel discriminated or anything. I did, when I used to work in France, I did feel the discrimination because scarf, like hijab or headscarf, is forbidden if you work in a public institution. So like when I work in public institutions, it was really hard. Like you have to decide, do you want to take this really good opportunity or no, because you don't have like really a choice. So I'm glad like I don't have to take this kind of decisions now, at least.
Yeah, it's nice seeing that progress, although it's slow. At least we're going somewhere, and I think seeing all of you in these positions definitely makes a difference for the rest of us. I'd like to turn it over to Safa now. We have a lot of questions from the audience, so Safa, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sarah, for moderating. So just one question off the bat. I know we're in a unique time with COVID and networking is a lot more daunting than what it used to be. So I guess what are your guys' advice for just young women just trying to meet other women in their field? How do you recommend we approach the situation that we're in just terms of networking? And do you have any best practices you could share with us on that front?
I feel like there are a lot of online meetups that people can take part of. There are also like a lot of Zoom presentations, and like I think there are a lot of online. It is harder because you don't meet the person directly. There are also like tools like LinkedIn. You can just like don't hesitate to send a message to the person and like people are happy to jump on a call and like talk to you and explain what they do. So this is like it's not as good as when you meet someone in person, but it still works.
Yeah, so also adding on to what Ella said is adding on to LinkedIn. I actually learned a lot of my LinkedIn tips from TikTok for some reason. Like they give really good advice. Like I'm shocked. So like going to TikTok, like maybe searching like I think I've like Wong Fu Consulting, like they give out pretty good tips as well. Just network on like you can search up like product design and like discover new tools like on TikTok. So that I think that was really consulting. Yeah, sorry. No, I'm so sorry. It's like I can't remember, it's morning. But yeah, so just go onto social media. It's like amazing. Clubhouse is also another one. So I've also met a lot of people at Clubhouse and like learned a lot of tools at Clubhouse. So just go and network social like online for now.
I will say I have a bunch of Clubhouse invites, so if anyone needs, hit me up. I can send you some.
Yeah, I recently just got on Clubhouse too. So it's like been really interesting to see how people are networking now. Like I feel like people are being a lot more creative. So it's nice to see at least it's easier to just talk to people you don't know. Cool. Another question I had on the topic of just being a woman in tech, was there someone in your life, whether it was in your professional career or in your family, was there someone who really inspired you just to kind of take on those challenges in tech? Did you guys have a mentor or someone that really guided you, or is it kind of just a self-discovery? I don't know if Samira, if you want to answer that first.
For me, it was more of self-discovery. I kind of observed my peers and people I worked with, and some people who are successful in other career fields, just their perseverance, and not putting yourself in a box. I think that's one mistake that I made at the beginning of my career, but as I've moved on, to actually see the possibilities and more possibilities that you can get into in this tech field. So yeah, it was definitely a self-discovery for me, but observing people who are successful around me and what it takes.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Dua, did you have anyone who inspired you to go into UX research, or was it something also you kind of just self-discovered as well?
I think for me, it was self-discovery, but I will say this, I feel like now, because there are more Muslim women in these tech roles, it is easier to reach out. Like I get folks reaching out and I'm more than happy to answer questions and chat and like talk about my journey. Whereas when I was joining UX research or just joining tech in general, I didn't see as many folks in my role. I did see women obviously in tech, but just might not be specific to my role. And it would be hard to find somebody similar to me to, you know, to chat with and feel comfortable with. I did meet some folks along the way who I could ask questions, but again, there wasn't that like connection and it wasn't as fully as comfortable in knowing that they have similar experiences to you. And so I am hopeful in the sense that I see more people like me in roles, and other girls and women who are trying to get into these roles can have somebody to talk to and get to and understand, you know, what their journey was like, even though I didn't necessarily have that in my specific role. So it was similar in the sense that it was some self-discovery as well. But yeah, so I think so I can't really speak to at least one person who was just like my mentor to getting into UX research.
Yeah, thank you. Ala, did you have anyone that guided you in UX or anyone important kind of in your professional journey that kind of helped you realize your goals?
Yeah, I think it's kind of mixed for me. Like I spend a lot of time just like discovering things by myself, and also like when I had the boot camp, like I had a mentor, so that was very helpful to have someone just like to ask him all the questions you need. And even now, like people around me who are doing UX or something that is closer, I'll always ask them. It's always nice to have like second eye for what I'm doing, and that's like you learn more and more by that. So it's like it is a mix, like doing your own research and then reaching out to people around you if you can find anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for sharing that. I know we're just a minute left. So the last question I just want to end on, and on a high note, is just what's some advice you could give for folks on this call, a lot of women who are interested in this field, just to kind of pursue their goals. I think a lot of times people are very nervous about entering tech and being like the first in their like family or, you know, whatever it is to do something. So just any words of advice you can give for folks going into UX.
Everyone has imposter syndrome. I know it's a cliche, but like everyone has it. And so don't let that stop you. I think you need two things. You need confidence and preparation. And so when you're lacking preparation, you know, go full throttle with the confidence. And when you're lacking confidence, you know, go full throttle with the preparation. Obviously both are important, but yeah, don't let imposter syndrome stop you.
I just want to throw out there that the industry is very fluid and lucrative. So if you think what you want to do doesn't exist, it does. Just don't be afraid to get out there and just look up what you want to do and how you want to break into the tech field.
Yeah, it's also a lot of work and a lot of like you need to keep learning continually. So yeah, just like there are a lot of resources, take advantage of all the resources that are free, and just keep working and things will get better and better. Just like the more you learn, the more you can put yourself out there, and the more it gets easier. And a lot of networking also, that's very helpful.
Yeah, just start, just start, just sign up for like Upwork today. Like who cares? Like just sign up for that like freelancing job. Like just go ahead and do it. And then like what Dua said, like just fake it until you make it kind of, but like at the same time you need like your design skills. Like so just know, like you know, just keep, yeah, just do it. Like yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I had a manager tell me once, like, they all don't know what they're doing either. So, like, you can just do it too. Like, be confident and just make sure you advocate for yourself in the process. But no, thank you guys so much for your time. Ala, Dua, Samira, Aisha. It was so great hearing from you. And you all have such unique perspectives. We're so grateful for you to join us and for our community to listen to you guys as well. Yeah, but we're kind of done right now. I just want to tell everyone we do have two upcoming events coming. As you know, March is Women's History Month. So we'll be speaking with Latinas in Tech and General Assembly, just to kind of kick off Muslim women in tech representation, but really grateful we could partner with you guys. And thank you so much for your time.
Before we end, just one last thing. If the speakers are okay with sharing their LinkedIn's in the chat, or if you guys, whatever your most preferred way to reach out to is, if anyone in the audience wants to reach out, please share that. But yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Great.
And